The concept of pretty privilege, in case you haven't heard of it, is essentially when something is socially attractive, it gets certain privileges over its contemporaries. For example, a conventionally attractive woman has a few more advantages over one who isn't, regardless of how good of a person either one is. Or compare the reputation of dolphins and sharks. Dolphins are loved while sharks are feared, and it's really only because dolphins are cute. Trust me, dolphins are horrible creatures. This concept extends to most aspects, as humans are more likely to favor things they find conventionally attractive, be it cute, beautiful, pretty, inspiring, etc. And it doesn't really matter how good that thing is. So, what does this have to do with anime? Typically in an anime, or really any kind of animation, one of the priorities is good animation. After all, it's the entire point. You wouldn't watch a movie where the acting is bad, would you? Anime, considering it often uses stylistically cheap tactics, is a little tricky in this regard. Most anime often look fine, prioritizing how a character looks over how they move. But a lot of the series that get the most attention are the ones that look gorgeous. Shows like Frieren Beyond Journey's End, One Piece, particularly recent arcs like Wano, Solo Leveling. People gush and rave at how great their animation is, so good word travels fast and they explode in popularity. But what happens when the best part of a show, or even the only good part, is the animation? When everything else like story, characters, world building, writing, all of it is very underwhelming. Let's talk about Demon Slayer, because it is the perfect example of my point. Though not as talked about as it once was, everyone loved Demon Slayer when it first came out. It was easily one of the most popular shonen battle of the late 2010s and early 2020s, with several hit seasons and a few movies. But the main compliment was always how pretty of a show it was. Have you seen this show? The animation is amazing. Look at how cool and fluid these fight scenes are. We'd always see the same clips. Granted, they are absolutely stunning. I can't deny that. But when it comes to characters, Demon Slayer is at best nothing special, and at worst, extremely forgettable. The character arcs are non-existent or shoddy or even aggravating, story is bare bones, mainly an excuse to get from one fight to the next, and the world feels dull, barely fleshed out beyond the most basic of fantasy. Hardly anyone ever discusses anything special when it comes to the writing, and anything that is said could just as easily be attributed to other shonen battle with honestly better story and characters. And yet it was loved and well received, and became one of the most popular anime of its time, even with an underwhelming story, characters, and world. While other shows did not look as pretty, weren't as popular, like Fruits Basket or Kemono Michi Rise Up. Again, animation quality is a priority when it comes to an animated series, but it shouldn't be the only priority. A series with okay animation but great characters and story is better than a series with great animation but only okay characters and story. Sword Art Online is another great example. Despite its dwindling story, bland self-insert protagonist, and often nonsensical writing that bends backwards to allow the plot to happen, the show struck a chord with many people, and a good part of that was because the production quality was really good. The fights were fantastic, with clean animation that still holds up years later. The art is good in general, honestly, but if this wasn't the case, I doubt SAO would have caught on as strongly. Sure, a lot of the fun was imagining yourself in these scenarios, that's why Kirito was so boring, but even that wouldn't have worked as well if the production wasn't as high quality. We've seen many of its followers try and fail to capture the same audience, even if the writing was better. A Returner's Magic Must Be Special fell off fairly quickly due to its middling animation, even though the story and characters are better than other, more popular shows from the same season. And though I've been a fan of the manhwa for years, I have to admit that Solo Leveling wouldn't have blown up as much as it has if the animation wasn't so gorgeous. We've seen this effect in the same show. Comparing One Punch Man Seasons 1 and 2, the writing quality remains about the same, but Season 2 got a lot of flack for its drop in animation quality, due to changing studios and time constraints. And it wasn't even bad animation, just nothing special, passable. Of course, some genres are exempt from this, like romance. There are so many popular romance anime with mediocre or decent animation, just as there are ones with wonderful animation. Action, fantasy, sci-fi, thriller, those genres have much more pressure when it comes to animation quality. So what does this mean? I'm not saying that animation quality isn't important, because it obviously is. And it doesn't have to be one or the other when it comes to writing and animation. Series like Frieren, Space Dandy, Gurren Lagann, Mob Psycho 100, and many others prove you can have both. However, animation quality really does seem to have a bit more sway than writing, at least in certain genres. So many popular shows have incredibly boring stories and characters and are completely carried by their animation, while others are overlooked because of their animation quality, despite having wonderful writing. I just think that people should look a little deeper than just how pretty a show is. After all, you shouldn't judge a book by its cover.